Lord forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack make it backflip. Telly Hank did with the action. With the vital speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby May. Just caught a touchdown from the bay.
When was the first time you did serious time, I guess?
Oh, the Nicky Barnes case.
And what year was that?
1977.
And that's the year of the riots, right?
Yes.
The year of the riots.
Berkowitz.
And that was your very first...
no.
Not very first, but serious...
That was the first time. Well, you know, I did 7 months. They gave me, I guess the judge and them must have realized it was a mistake, so I wound up getting out. They said it was going to have like a suspended sentence over me. Then about 2 years later, I got caught in an overdue rental car with a gun. And I wound up getting 18 months.
Okay. State time.
Yeah, so I didn't go to Rikers Island. I went to a place called, what was the name of this joint? I went to a place upstate in the Eastern Correctional Facility.
Eastern? Yeah, Eastern. You know,
it has another Nakana.
Okay.
So when I went up there, I just started, I hooked up with a guy who used to be, he used to be one of them former champion dudes, sparring partners, and he just started training me, and I just started staying with him.
Now, 77, around that time, are you a father?
Yes. Yes, my son Pete was born in, really, I had been a father and didn't realize it.
You didn't know
you met Matthew.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
so I don't want to talk about
it. Yeah. We don't have to talk about it,
but yeah, I had Pete, who, you know,
Now, a lot of people don't know, some people, the younger generation, or some may know, your son is also named after you. Your Nick Pistol Pete.
You know what it was? My name Leonard never seemed appropriate for the hood. So I stuck with Pete. And when Pete was born, I said he shouldn't have to try to explain himself because everybody, I thought their name was Pete. So I named him Pete Leonard. Peter Leonard.
Now he has. Now when you think about it, and when people know his story, he's a little bit younger than me. He's very well respected in the street. He is serving life in prison, federal prison. Actually, he avoided the death penalty.
You know, that's on paper.
Yeah.
But you know, they ain't been giving nobody.
Yeah, I know. Well, unless they did what? The Unabomber and
you gotta do something.
And the guy from Boston. You know, they got to make
a kid that they alleged sent a letter to 4 other guys on the street. And I mean, come on.
Yeah.
There was guys out here that were giving orders that were older, like the guy Denso or whatever. He had to trial right around the same time, and I collected a lot of information. I said, Pete, you ain't got to worry about no death penalty. Go to trial. You got a chance of maybe getting a hung jury or beating some of these charges.
Were you in or out at the time?
I was in.
You was in?
Been in about 10 years when he
had got into that situation.
Right. Yeah, he slipped away from me because he had altercation, and then he was scared to come in and visit me, so I couldn't advise him on what he was doing. But when he first came up to me, kind of happy to show me what he was doing, I was shocked, and I tried to tell him, look, I need you to be home. When I come home, I try to get somebody to take him away from the street, and the guy was supposed to be putting him into the music business, and he kept complaining to me, man, your son, I can't keep him in the house. Every time I turn around, he leaves me. Once these guys call him, he leaves. You know, the guy lived out in Long Island, had a nice mansion and stuff. But anyway...
was he trying to be like his dad, you think?
Yeah, I think Pete, I think he had too many nephews, too many cousins that was always telling him stories about me, because I did have a lot of people with me that I protected the whole time. They made money and never went to jail, and they went ahead and got jobs.
I've read stories and I've heard stories that he was very proud of who his dad was, and he was trying to live up, like many young men, trying to live up to who they thought their father were.
His mother's side of the family is very big, and I took care of a lot of them. A lot of them worked with me, and nobody ever had a problem. You know?
It seemed like, you know, or even early on, is, you know, some of the things that you talked about, that you had mentors, people that kind of carried you through that part of your life. You think that might have, you know, if your son had some of those same resources, he probably would have been making different decisions?
I think if I was home, he definitely would have made different decisions, you know.
Hey, We back. Shit got Popalot. Headshot City, we home. We're going to spend a lot of time in the Bronx and Harlem for this episode. There's a saying that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And after hearing this story, it's going to be a lot easier to determine if that was the case for one of the most feared gangsters to ever come out of New York City. Now, the person that I'm talking about would go on to span almost 2 eras in the streets, and his son would come behind him and terrorize the era right behind it. And that person that I'm talking about is going to be a guy by the name of Leonard Pistol Pete Rollack. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with the exploits of his son, Pistol Pete Rollack, who would cause havoc in his time on the streets and would go on to start the sex, money, murder chapter of the Bloods after he would be locked up, who is serving his time in probably the most dangerous prison in the nation, ADX Florence, with guys like Jeff Fort, OG Mac, Larry Hoover, El Chapo, Tyler Bingham, King Blood, and every terrorist you could name, domestic or foreign. Though looking on the bright side, in the interview, his father would say that he's in a place surrounded with strong minds, mentioning guys like Jeff Fort and Larry Hoover. But when you got so many big players in one tight spot, shit could easily get real. But a lot of people say Pistol Pete Rollack's life would have been a lot different had his father been home, and that's including his father. Leonard Rollack, who grew up in New York City, would get into boxing early on in his life. He would eventually get a chance to hone his skills at the Golden Gloves, earning him the name Pistol Pete. He would admit that he came from a very decent family, but growing up in New York at those times, money opportunities was just hard to come by for young people. And with changes to the laws that made it harder to prosecute juveniles, that left Leonard Rollack and guys like him an opportunity to make money when some of the older hustlers would come to them with a strategy that would be used years later, halfway across the globe, by an organization in Detroit called Young Boys Incorporated. Leonard Rollack would go on to say that the older guys would pretty much tell him that this same pack that will put me away for years, you will be home in a matter of hours. And once he would get a little taste of that money, he would be off to the races. Heroin was the drug of choice at that time, and he would run a smooth operation for a little while until he would run into a hiccup when he would do some business with the brother of another well-respected guy in the game, Guy Fisher, one of our favorite gangsters from the game. Guy Fisher had a brother by the name of Wally Fisher. So depending on who you ask, it would be Wally Fisher that would really be the reason that the Nicky Barnes organization would end up being brought down. After several attempts at prosecution, the authorities would finally nail Mr. Untouchable at a trial that Guy Fisher would end up being acquitted of. But several people loosely affiliated but not a part of the Nicky Barnes Association would end up going down with him on that case. Guys like Fat Steve Monsanto, as well as the guy that we're covering today, Leonard Rollack. In the interview, he would go on to say how he felt like he thought that the judge made a mistake in that case, and he would luckily be only sentenced to 7 months. Now, when you mention guys like Nicky Barnes and the amount of time that they got, when you get involved with a case early on in your life with somebody like that, that would probably be enough to take you out the game. But Leonard Rollack was just getting started, as that was only his first serious brush with the law. After his release from that arrest, he would get right back to the streets, where he would face a series of minor arrests, most notably for gun possession. But things would really take off for Leonard Rollack when he would become a high-ranking member in an organization that was ran by a guy by the name of James Jackson. Jackson, who was a player in the game at that time, would go on to fill the void that was left when the government would snatch Nicky Barnes and a lot of those guys off the street. And Rollack and the Jackson organization would go on a run of their own, as the authorities would allege that the enterprise distributed millions of dollars worth of narcotics over a 7-year period in not only New York, but Connecticut, Washington, D.C., as well as a few other cities. The group would go on to make millions of dollars in the late 70s and early 80s, but the saying ain't good things last forever. is nothing lasts forever. And it would all crumble sometime in or around 1989, because that's when Leonard Rollack, along with 6 other defendants, would be hit with the RICO, or conspiracy to participate in a racketeering enterprise. The government would allege that from approximately January 1st, 1980 to October 31st, 1987, the Jackson organization would constitute as an illegal enterprise with the purpose of obtaining income for members of the organization through large-scale schemes to distribute heroin in Manhattan, the Bronx, Bridgeport, Connecticut, Boston, Massachusetts, as well as Washington, D.C. Already being in deep, with this being a second RICO case that he was connected to, the first being Nicky Barnes, it would get worse for Leonard Rollack in September of 1987, when a month after he would enter his not guilty plea to the charges. The leader of the organization, James Jackson, would enter in a formal cooperation agreement with the government, going on to provide information that would permit the government to charge additional crimes to Leonard Rollack as well as his co-defendants. Based on information supplied by Jackson, a month later, on October 27th of 1987, the government would take the death of a guy by the name of Norman Bannister and add the conspiracy to commit murder to Leonard Rollack's case. He would initially get sentenced to 50 years, but after several appeals, he would end up getting that conviction overturned and end up serving right around 25 years. And he's actually free now and doing a lot of positive things, where he's working as a researcher and he's an analyst in post-conviction litigation. I did see where he was active on Instagram trying to make a change, still in the boxing. If y'all looking to tap in with him, he on IG at Peter1003. Now, I'm not quite sure if any of y'all know anything about his son or his case, but he is highly restricted from communication with the outside world. I did see where his pops was in a legal battle just to try to get communication with his son, as at that time they hadn't spoke for years. I'm not sure what the communication is like now, but just imagine being in that situation. And you have to commend Leonard Rollack just for being a stand-up guy coming up in the time, especially the situation he was dealt with, being on a case with Nicky Barnes. Not that Nicky Barnes snitched in that first case. He would eventually snitch on the commission, but also the case with Jackson. So it's just wow. But y'all make sure y'all hit that red subscribe button right under this video so y'all know when this real trill spill shit is dropping. Y'all get in the comment box below. Y'all flood it. Y'all let me know what cities we need to go to, what gangsters we haven't covered, what stories we missed. We gonna be right there. And y'all know what it is with me, man. Y'all follow me on IG, Twitter, POP_A_LOT. And y'all know how we rocking, boy. Whole lot of mob shit.